coming back to what you were saying, exactly. So basically, you have a lot of people who, if I was to go like in the south of France on holiday, I would see people surfing in Arcachon. Okay, so people go and surf, but why can't people surf maybe in Togo? Why can't people surf in Ivory Coast? Why can't it become the surfland? Do you understand what I'm saying by that? Why do you need to go to Hawaii before you can do some surfing? Why is there no competition of surfing? In Africa, have you ever heard of that? I mean, maybe there is, and maybe there are. I haven't seen it, but it's things like that that means that we are only doing certain things, and we are limited to that. So limited to a certain status of what we need to become or stay. And this is where you can see that it's not about what you bring. So you could bring the surfboard. It's not going to change anything. It's about what people think in their mind. So when you're working on the mindset and when you're making people to understand and come to a realization that actually there is no fear, all you have to do is put some steps into safety, if I can say it like that. Then what happens is that you start to create a wider range of your allowance, if I can say allowance, into what you can achieve, what you cannot achieve. And so I use the surfing experience here, but you can imagine that it applies to different things that are not being done in Africa or could be done, but they are carried, people are carrying a lot of fear and doubt about
it. Thank you for that. No, it is important. Of course, I'm going to ask you just now how we can dismantle some of this fear. Because with all those fear in us, we cannot go very far in life. The other day, no, actually, well, yesterday I was talking with my wife, about our culture. Sometimes we have not been bold enough to change some of these things. And of course, I even did a small video and put it out there because the guest I was interviewed before them were making reference to child marriage in northern Nigeria. And so people there say it is their culture. I say, okay, fine, it is culture. But what is even culture in that sense? Let's try to refine it. Let's try to understand it. You see, when people set up the code that guide their society, they did it within a time frame. And of course, they die and they pass on this to their children and their children's children. I think the error that we make most of the time is that we think that those who did that in their time already foresee everything that is going to happen in this world, and they set up the code that must guide your life for thy kingdom come. It is not true. It is wrong. That is, they were acting based on their level of understanding, within their capacity, within their limit, within their own. Now, take a look at it in a very simple way. Say maybe, for example, 250 years ago, 500 years ago, I don't want to go as far as 1,000 years ago or 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Those that were living then didn't know that there was going to be internet. So in their structure of life, there was no room for internet. They didn't know that somebody could be flying in the air in the name of aeroplane. How can you do that? It cannot even be imagined. Somebody fly in the air? You can't think of that. So a culture that will exist at that time cannot, of course, include that. So if we now have those things living, we are using supercomputers today. Some of the things that we are talking about as our culture, of course, some of them does not stand the test of time anymore. But it doesn't mean we need to throw them away. We just need to take them up and refine them. The one that can stand the test of time, we take them. Those that cannot stand the test of time, we just wipe them away. Or maybe we can make a copy of them and put them in the museum. If we don't do that, we will always be going back. But we're supposed to be going ahead. How can we dismantle some of these limiting beliefs so that we can progress? Because with it, we cannot go anywhere.
Oh my gosh. So I love that. I love what you were saying. And you know what? When you were talking, I thought of Bob Marley. And I don't know if you know the Redemption song where he says exactly that. He says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. And as you were talking, I was just really seeing this like in big in my head is that so fear is used to keep people in general to keep people playing a small. But what happened, and especially in our continent, I'm going to say, is that we have a long-standing of history of fear being used to actually stop nations. So can you imagine the work that we have to do? So obviously, we always say that the everything is in the end of the people, but I think it's not only in the end of the people, it's in the end of everybody, and we all have to do some collective work. However, on an individual coming from an individual place, yeah, and coming from your place, what it is that is your deepest desire? Do you actually know what is your deepest desire? I'm not talking about what your mom, your dad, your aunt, or somebody has said that was yours. What is yours for you? So, for example, you were talking about these young people, these young just girls who are going to child marriage. Yeah. They haven't asked to go into child marriage. And I think that there's something we need to really understand is like the liberty of people, it stops where you're hurting someone else's liberty. So what you are creating, for example, when you're putting a child into a child marriage, is you're creating trauma. So that trauma, it keeps on happening and happening and happening. There's so many different traditions and cultures that are still being done right now at this moment in time, which shouldn't exist. They shouldn't exist because they are creating hurt and they are a natural danger to humanity. And when I say a natural danger, there's people who go into child marriage and they die. And I think people need to be aware of that. There's people who have female genitalia mutilation, and that creates that a child is going to die. I've actually assisted a woman who had this made to her, and she was pregnant. And when she got to the hospital in here in Europe, yeah, when she got to the hospital, because they didn't have her paperwork, they never knew she had she had this done to her. So basically, they had to create a situation in emergency to get the baby out. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what this is causing? So it's not only causing hurt, it didn't cause hurt to this woman once when she had to go through the procedure. In her life, it's created a problem for her. So the trauma keeps on coming, yeah? And then when she went to give birth again, it caused a problem. Can you imagine that in Africa, for example, if a woman doesn't have a child, it's sad to say that, but if a woman doesn't have a child at a certain age, they say something is wrong with her. However, if you've performed this onto this person and then the child dies because of that, whose fault is it? At the time, nobody wants to take the blame. Nobody wants to say, well, actually, I did this to my daughter. No, 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 no. What they want to say is it was God's will. And I'm sorry to say that and to shatter people's belief, but basically, it is not God's will. God's will has never been that somebody is going to come and is going to suffer because of what somebody else is decided. That's not God's will.